Let me bring up Graham Moore, who's going to be talking about question 4.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me and my colleague, Jamie Morey, she, her, the opportunity to speak. I'm Graham Moore, he, him, the Educational Outreach Director of Yes on 4. This is actually my second ballot measure campaign. I wasn't staff, but I was a volunteer knocking on a lot of doors for the transgender rights campaign in 2018. We would love to have progressive mass endorsement of this measure, which me and Jamie know painfully well is really a matter of life and death for many people, and disability versus freedom for many people. So what this measure is this will provide regulated access to 5 therapeutic psychedelic substances in Massachusetts. In addition to that, it is going to remove limited criminal penalties for personal use of these substances, in line with the official recommendation of the American Medical Association to treat personal substance use as a public health issue rather than a criminal issue. The way this would work if this measure passed is that the governor, attorney general, and the treasurer, I believe, would appoint a commission and an advisory board which would draft rules and regulations around providing regulated access to one of the 5 substances over the course of the next 2 years. So in 2026, the first psychedelic therapy centers would open, and they would have 1 substance available within this regulated therapeutic framework. And over time, the program would have the option to add more of the substances. All the substances in this measure have demonstrated therapeutic value. And what I mean by that is they have extensive histories of therapeutic use, and the clinical and observational research on them is supportive of their therapeutic value. 2 of the substances, psilocybin, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, if you've heard of those, is a prescription medication in Australia already for treatment-resistant depression. Another one of the substances, ibogaine, which is a psychedelic originating in Africa, is already a prescription medication in New Zealand, among a few other countries, where it is used off-label to treat opioid addiction. Ibogaine has unique therapeutic value in that it can eliminate withdrawal symptoms, which for anybody who's aware of the horror of an opioid addiction is often what keeps people enthralled to these drugs. They feel so awful when they try to get off of them that they feel so sick they have to keep using the thing that's killing them. People take ibogaine, and after even 1 dose, they can be free of that, giving them this critical window for recovery that nothing else can provide. That genuinely is pretty much it. We're happy to answer questions, and we can talk a little bit about our personal experiences. All these substances are non-addictive. They're already legally available if you're rich. You can go abroad and you can access this care therapeutically legally in a number of different countries, including Jamaica, the Netherlands, Mexico, Costa Rica. So if you're rich, you can read about this, you can fly off and you can get this treatment for your son or for yourself or for your spouse. But if you're in Massachusetts and you're struggling, you're stuck with the options we have now, or you're stuck going into the underground, which is very risky, where you can fall prey to unethical practitioners. Me and Jamie are both familiar with the highest levels of conventional psychiatric care. We've both had loved ones hospitalized at McLean in Belmont in Massachusetts, which is the #1, well, for a long time, it was the #1 ranked psychiatric hospital. Now it's #2, and MGH is #1. And people get great care there, and sometimes it works, but a lot of time it does not. I know somebody at McLean on 15 medications who's been there almost a year, getting the top of the line care, still not better, still having to do a pros and cons list over whether or not to drink water. That's how sick she is. I used to be that sick, and then I used psilocybin when I was at the end of my rope, and I'm better now. Every single day I walk outside my house, I walk down the street. I used to have crippling OCD that made me a slave to my own mind, and now I'm free. And I know people still living in the hell that I used to live in, but they're too frightened because of the illegality of these substances to get better. And so, or to have the option. I can't guarantee this would help them, but the unjustified prohibition of these substances is keeping people without desperately needed alternatives. All around the world, never has access to these substances been observed to harm public health. Colorado passed practically the same measure as we're proposing in Massachusetts. Impaired driving related fatalities in Colorado went down by 24%. If you round up, it was like 23 point something percent, 24% after the measure passed. Similarly, the percentage of hospitalizations, which is already tiny, it stayed practically the same. It's like 0.27% of hospitalizations in Colorado, to give you a sense of how small an issue this is. And it's still lower than it was in 2020. And the amount of arrests related to psychedelics also went down. So all of the opposition talking about what this might do, it's never happened anywhere. In the Netherlands, Jamaica, this stuff is safe. It's a human rights issue. You know, we're fighting for people's right to try something that could save their life when they're really, really sick. We're saying people shouldn't be arrested, shouldn't be threatened with arrest for trying to get better. And we're saying that people who have trouble with substances, they should be treated compassionately by their healthcare providers, and they should be empowered to tell their healthcare providers and be honest with them, not be threatened of criminal consequences, losing their job, losing custody of their kids. That's wrong. I'm going to pass the mic now to my colleague, Jamie Moore, to tell you a little bit about the dire need as the spouse of a combat veteran, as the mother of 4 kids, and then we're happy to open up to questions. So here you go, Jamie.
Hi, good night. I just wanted to start by maybe backing it up a little bit and talking about the need for this. I think most people are aware that we are in a severe mental health care crisis in this country, especially since COVID. Rates of suicide are through the roof. There's unprecedented numbers of people suffering from depression, anxiety, other severe mental health issues. And I think we also all know someone who's been in therapy for a long time or taken medication for a long time and haven't found relief from that. Pharmaceuticals do help some people. Talk therapy does help some people, but for many, those options don't work. PTSD in particular is, a huge problem in the veteran and first responder population. And there really is no good treatment for PTSD, but these medications we've found are extremely, extremely effective in treating trauma, which basically is the underlying cause of, many mental health issues, substance use, and, treating that trauma in a really effective way can give people relief from, the many health issues that result from that. It's treatment-resistant depression. I have, a 21-year-old son who has struggled with severe depression and other mental health issues since he was 14 years old. He's been in constant therapy. He's taken all the pharmaceuticals that they've recommended, and some of these medicines come with warnings. Actually, most of them come with a warning on the side of the box that says it may make you want to kill yourself. And that happened to me with one of my children when they first started taking the medicine. I got a call when they were on the school bus. I can't stop thinking about wanting to kill myself. And it had never been suicidal before. Another side effect of a medication my child was put on said it might make males lactate. The side effects from these medications are often worse than the symptoms that they're trying to treat. So, my husband is an Iraq combat veteran, and he suffers from severe PTSD. He's been under the care of the VA for the past 2 years, very dedicated to getting well. He's constantly there in therapy. He's taken all their medications. He's been through their 8-week PTSD program, and he has done nothing but deteriorate. He's lost his job, and things got really, really bad. They got him to agree to a 6-week hospitalization inpatient, which is what they think he needs. About a month ago, he agreed to that and was told that there was no bed for him until October 29th. And last week, he was taken by ambulance to the emergency room and hospitalized at the Brockton VA against his will for a week. His condition is very severe, and people like him need a new option. All the options have been exhausted. There are several nonprofits that take veterans and veteran spouses overseas to where, as Graham mentioned, where it's legal to receive this care, and the results are absolutely amazing. The clinical research shows these things are, very effective and safe. And we see it in all the stories of healing that people share with us as we do our work on this campaign on our website, which we linked. You can see the research for yourself. You can see the personal stories. A veteran reached out to me from the next town over and said that he was hospitalized for suicidality, and it was the VA doctor that pulled him aside and whispered in his ear, "Look into psilocybin mushrooms." And this guy had never even used cannabis. He was very straight-laced. But once he started looking at the research, it's just, you can't argue with it. And he did psychedelic assisted therapy, and it saved his life. He's now happy with a brand new baby. And we have so many stories like that. There's no reason for these very safe substances to remain illegal. The most dangerous substance of all is a national pastime in our country, alcohol. And it's outrageous to keep things that have been used for thousands of years in indigenous cultures as medicine out of the hands of people who need them, and continue to put people in cages for using them and trying to heal themselves. So I would love everyone to check out our website. Very informative.
Yeah, I'll drop in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, the evidence is there. The stories of personal healing are there. And yeah, we need everyone to please vote yes on for hope and healing, because it is much needed, and happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. I'm going to bring up a few of the questions in the chat. So what do you anticipate the opposition being to question 4, and like what are the opposition arguments that you're hearing, and how do you respond?
So I wrote an open letter recently that has references, that makes the very strong evidence-based case for this measure, and I dropped that in the chat. I think it's important to say that we really have the evidence overwhelmingly on our side. Some people will nitpick and say that the clinical evidence is preliminary, and they're right for a lot of the substances, not for psilocybin, psilocin. But some of the clinical evidence is very preliminary, but that has to be contextualized with the fact that these are already used as therapeutics and have been used as therapeutics extensively and for a very long time. So you can't compare these substances apples to apples with new drugs going through the FDA system. 10,000 people, less than 10,000 people used Prozac before it was approved. Tens of millions of people have already used psilocybin. Millions of people have already used mescaline. They have long and extensive and well-documented histories of therapeutic use. So we know more from a public health perspective and from a real-world evidence perspective about these things than a newly invented drug. In terms of the opposition's arguments, they're worried about us no longer prosecuting people for the limited personal use of these things. It's very important to be clear, this is not rampant commercialization of these substances. This isn't expected to be a gold rush. Only a small percentage of adults use these things at all. Most of them use them very infrequently. And then on top of that, this measure does not allow retail sales. So you can't go into a store, purchase the psychedelic, and bring it home with you. You have to go through this regulated process, which involves, by law in this measure, a screening. So if you have a medical contraindication, you can't access it. And then you have to have a preparation session where they prepare you to have this substance administered, where you're prepped for the experience, set your intention. Then you have to have the experience under the supervision of a facilitator, a licensed facilitator. And then even after that, by law, you have to come in for a third appointment, an integration session, to help you make the best of that experience therapeutically. In terms of the limited personal use, people can cultivate within a limited space, some of these things at home, but there's no selling, there's no buying, and there's a limit to how much you can have on your person. There's no public use. Public use is prohibited. And of course, use by people under 21 is prohibited. And if you have this stuff in your house, if you're growing it, it has to be secured from access by anyone under 21. So that's what the opposition is making a whole lot of hay about, that and the idea that people can't give informed consent to this, which again is absurd. People give informed consent all the time. They fly off to Costa Rica if they have the money, or if they're so fortunate they get a nonprofit to help them. You know, we know enough for people to give informed consent. And from a public health perspective, the opposition can't point to a single place where this has been an issue. In the Netherlands, you can walk into stores and purchase psilocybin truffles and take them home. You know, it's everybody's worst nightmare, you know, of the conservative view, and there's no issues. Like, it's less than 1% of the population in the Netherlands even uses psilocybin. These are truly non-addictive substances that the real world evidence backs up, have a very low potential for abuse. The observational evidence that exists indicates that personal use is more beneficial than harmful, period. And we think if somebody does have problems with these substances, it should be a public health issue. You know, they shouldn't be arrested. So.
And you've touched on this, I believe, a bit, but a question: does question 4 address oversight of the administrators or therapists who would be kind of administering the drugs and following up on the treatment of patients who do this therapy?
So this is all, a lot of this is all to be determined. So this commission and advisory board, which has to have a behavioral health specialist on it, is going to create these rules over an 18 to 24 month period. So the screening is required, but in terms of the details of the oversight, that's to be determined. It's intentionally written, the law is intentionally written so that there can be different levels of oversight depending on the patients and depending on the qualifications of the facilitator. So for example, if you are a psychiatrist, you may have different requirements in order to be a licensed facilitator than somebody who does not have a medical degree. Similarly, if you're working with a more vulnerable or a more vulnerable patient population, so for example, veterans with PTSD, perhaps you might require more training. In terms of how much training that could be, we can look to Oregon, where this program for one of the substances, for psilocybin, is already in effect. Facilitators there as a baseline require 160 hours of specialized training. So that could be, we could require more rigorous training here in Massachusetts. We have a lot of expertise to draw from at Harvard, from Dana-Farber, from MGH, but that's to be determined. Other questions? And I will just say personally, yeah, everybody should talk to their healthcare professional before doing anything, you know, any kind of health intervention.
And I think most of the other things, I think I'll do this and then kind of wrap it up with a question about if there are any drug companies trying to get patents for any of these, and what is the FDA's openness to approving them?
Well, the FDA seems very open, very excited. So psilocybin was actually twice granted a breakthrough therapy designation by the FDA. Initially, it was just for treatment-resistant depression, and then it received the designation for major depressive disorder. And what that breakthrough therapy designation says is that the preliminary clinical evidence indicates this could be far and above superior to existing treatments. So the FDA is very interested. FDA approval of psilocybin is anticipated within the next 3 years or so. But even once that happens, access initially is anticipated to be very, 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 very narrow, and far beyond the need and desire for these substances. And the others are also going through a similar process, but they're much farther away, maybe as much as a decade away.
Okay, great. And then we need to get to the next one. You've beat me to my ass of dropping links in the chat. So I'll note that you already have kind of dropped links in the chat. But if you want to just vocally tell people where they should go if they want to learn more. Yeah, go to maformentalhealth.org and follow us on social media. We're Yes4MA, I think. So here we go. Yes4MA at Yes4MA.
I dropped the link to our social toolbox in the chat as well, which will give you the links on all of our social. And also our emails. Like, you can reach out to me directly, you can reach out to Jamie. Jamie is our community engagement director. If she's trying to plan some fun events, she's happy to get you involved however you want to. We could really use your endorsement. Thank you so much for your time. Happy to be here. Have a wonderful night, everyone.
Awesome. Graham and Jamie, thank you so much for joining us tonight. If I can get a round of Zoom applause.